This is episode 17 of the Henry George Daily Devotional, recorded immediately after completing episode 16, which was recorded an hour after episode 15. It is weird to batch videos. I know it's done, and now I'm doing it. I hope you had a good weekend. I'm about to enjoy mine, maybe. All right, we continue talking about wages and their source. Um, and we just started talking a little bit about money. We'll see what we learn here. There is one branch of production in regard to which the confusions of thought which arise from the habit of estimating capital in money are least likely to occur, inasmuch as its product is the general material and standard of money. And it so happens that this business furnishes us almost side by side with illustrations of production passing from the simplest to the most complex forms. Okay. In the early days of California, as afterward in Australia, the placer miner who found in riverbed or surface deposit the glittering particles which the slow processes of nature had for ages been accumulating, picked up or washed out his quote, wages, so too he called them, in actual money. For coin being scarce, gold dust passed as currency by weight, and at the end of the day had his wages in money in a buckskin bag in his pocket. There can be no dispute as to whether these wages came from capital or not. They were manifestly the product of his labor. Nor could there be any dispute when the holder of a specially rich claim hired men to work for him and paid them off in the identical money which their labor had taken from gulch or bar. As coin became more abundant, its greater convenience in saving the trouble and loss of weighing assigned gold dust As coin became more abundant, its greater convenience in saving the trouble and loss of weighing assigned gold dust to the place of a commodity, and with coin obtained by the sale of the dust their labor had procured, the employing miner paid off his hands. Where he had coin enough to do so, instead of selling his gold dust at the nearest store and paying a dealer's profit, he retained it until he got enough to take a trip or send by express to San Francisco, where at the mint he could have it turned into coin without charge. While thus accumulating gold dust, he was lessening his stock of coin, just as the manufacturer, while accumulating a stock of goods, lessens his stock of money. Yet no one would be obtuse enough to imagine that in thus taking in gold dust and paying out coin, the miner was lessening his capital. But the deposits that could be worked without preliminary labor were soon exhausted, and gold mining rapidly took a more elaborate character. Before claims could be opened so as to yield any return, deep shafts had to be sunk, great dams constructed, long tunnels cut through the hardest rock, water brought for miles over mountain ridges and across deep valleys, and expensive machinery put up. These works could not be constructed without capital. Sometimes their construction required years, during which no return could be hoped for, while the men employed had to be paid their wages every week or every month. Surely, it will be said, in such cases, even if in no others, that wages do actually come from capital and are actually advanced by capital and must necessarily lessen capital in their payment. Surely here at least, industry is limited by capital, for without capital such works could not be carried on. George says, let us see. Okay, I'm excited, are you? It is cases of this class that are always instanced as showing that wages are advanced from capital. For where wages are paid before the object of the labor is obtained or is finished, as in agriculture, where plowing and sowing must precede by several months the harvesting of the crop, as in the erection of buildings, the construction of ships, railroads, canals, etc. I'd add in there the making of video games, maybe. It is clear that the owners of the capital paid in wages cannot expect an immediate return, but as the phrase is, must, quote, outlay it, or, quote, lie out of it, unquote, for a time, which sometimes amounts to many years, and hence, if first principles are not kept in mind, it is easy to jump to the conclusion that wages are advanced by capital. George continues. But such cases will not embarrass the reader, to whom in what it has preceded I have made myself clearly understood. An easy analysis will show that these instances where wages are paid before the product is finished or even produced do not afford any exception to the rule apparent where the product is finished before wages are paid. If I go to a broker to exchange silver for gold, I lay down my silver, which he counts and puts away, and then hands me the equivalent in gold, minus his commission. Does the broker advance me any capital? Manifestly not. What he had before in gold, he now has in silver, plus his profit. And as he got the silver before he paid out the gold, there is on his part not even momentarily an advance of capital. Now, this operation of the broker is precisely analogous to what the capitalist does, when, in such cases as we are now considering, he pays out capital in wages. As the rendering of labor precedes the payment of wages, and as the rendering of labor in production implies the creation of value, the employer receives value before he pays out value. He but exchanges capital of one form for capital of another form, for the creation of value does not depend upon the finishing of the product. It takes place at every stage of the process of production as the immediate result of the application of labor, and hence, no matter how long the process in which it is engaged, labor always adds to capital by its exertion before it takes from capital in its wages. Here is a blacksmith at his forge making picks. Clearly he is making capital, adding picks to his employer's capital before he draws money from it in wages. Here is a machinist or a boiler maker working on the keel plates of a Great Eastern. I guess that's a kind of train engine, train steam boiler. Is not he also just as clearly creating value, making capital? The giant steamship, as the pick, is an article of wealth, an instrument of production, and though the one may not be completed for years, while the other is completed in a few minutes, each day's work in the one case as in the other is as clearly a production of wealth and addition to capital. In the case of the steamship, as in the case of the pick, it is not the last blow any more than the first blow that creates the value of the finished product. The creation of value is continuous. It immediately results from the exertion of labor. I would argue you need some kind of like time average idea, because there's definitely some acts of labor, that are more important than other acts of labor. But I get your point, Henry. We see this very clearly wherever the division of labor has made it customary for different parts of the full process of production to be carried on by different sets of producers. That is to say, wherever we are in the habit of estimating the amount of value which the labor expended in any preparatory stage of production has created. And a moment's reflection will show that this is the case as to the vast majority of products. Take a ship, a building, a jackknife, a book, a lady's thimble, or a loaf of bread. They are finished products, but they were not produced at one operation, or by one set of producers. And this being the case, we readily distinguish different points or stages in the creation of the value, which as completed articles they represent. When we do not distinguish different parts in the final process of production, we do distinguish the value of the materials. The value of these materials may often be again decomposed many times, exhibiting as many clearly defined steps in the creation of the final value. At each of these steps we habitually estimate a creation of value, an addition to capital. The batch of bread which the baker is taking from the oven has a certain value, But this is composed in part of the value of the flour from which the dough was made, and this again is composed of the value of the wheat, the value given by milling, etc. Iron in the form of pigs is very far from being a completed product. It must yet pass through several, or perhaps through many, stages of production before it results in the finished articles that were the ultimate objects for which the iron ore was extracted from the mine. Yet is not pig iron capital? And so the process of production is not really completed when a crop of cotton is gathered, nor yet when it is ginned and pressed, nor yet when it arrives at Lowell or Manchester, those are cities in Massachusetts, nor yet when it is converted into yarn, nor yet when it becomes cloth, but only when it is finally placed in the hands of the consumer. Yet at each step in this progress there is clearly enough a creation of value, an addition to capital. Why therefore, although we do not habitually distinguish and estimate it, is there not a creation of value, an addition to capital, when the ground is plowed for the crop? Is it because it may possibly be a bad season and the crop may fail? Evidently not, for a like possibility of misadventure attends every one of the many steps in the production of the finished article. On the average, a crop is sure to come up, and so much plowing and sowing will, on the average, result in so much cotton in the boll, as surely as so much spinning of cotton yarn will result in so much cloth. Let's see how much. Oh yeah, there's plenty there for a whole nother episode of the Henry George Daily Devotional, which we will get to as surely. Damn it. Yeah, so I'm doing, my labor here is creating a whole read along of this whole book, yet each episode itself is adding to the value. I don't know. I don't know, man. See you later.